Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Michael Slepian, and he's here to share with us his new book, The Secret Life of Secrets: How Our Inner Worlds Shape Well-Being, Relationships, and Who We Are. So Michael is the Stanford C. Bernstein and Company Associate Professor of Leadership and Ethics at Columbia University, a recipient of the Rising Star Award from the Association for Psychological Science. He is the leading expert on psychology of secrets and has authored more than 50 articles on secrecy, truth, and deception. His research has been covered by the New York Times, The Atlantic, The New Yorker, The Economist, The Wall Street Journal, BBC, NPR, and many more. So welcome to the show, Michael Slepian.
Thanks for having me.
I was so intrigued by your book, I know we needed to talk, but what had you inspired to even follow this topic?
So a long time ago, I stumbled my way into this research topic 10 years ago now, and I was not originally out to study secrecy. I was at the time studying metaphor. And I was interested in metaphor in grad school. And one metaphor out of many that I was studying was this idea that secrets can be heavy. People will talk about a secret as if it can weigh you down or it can be weighty. And, I wondered, is this idea of this sort of heaviness or this burden of secret, if people talk about secrets in this way, does that reflect something deeper about how they think about secrets? And so my early studies were looking at that idea, where we had people think about significant secrets, and then we asked them to make a variety of judgments. And sure enough, when just simply thinking about secrets, people acted as if they were physically burdened in that moment. They judged distances as farther, they judged hills as steeper, and tasks as requiring more effort, as if they were physically encumbered in that moment, as if the secret was compromising their resources. And when I started presenting that research to people, some people found it very interesting. Some people thought, how can you say this is secrecy? Are you really studying secrecy? Don't you need to bring two people together into a room and have one person hide something from the other person in conversation to study secrecy? And that's when I realized we actually didn't know anything about the psychology of secrecy so much. We didn't know how often people had to hide their secrets in conversation, or what secrets they kept, or how often people kept secrets, how many secrets they keep. And so we essentially started the research from the ground up, asking, what secrets do people have? How often do they keep secrets? When a secret comes to mind, what's happening in that moment?
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think it's good that we just start from the beginning. So what really constitutes a secret?
Yes, so the definition turns out to be important. And the way prior folks had looked at the idea of secrecy was they defined secrecy as an action of concealing something in a conversation. And the reason why that definition is a little bit problematic is that our secrets do not only exist within those conversations, they exist before them and afterwards too. And the way I define secrecy as the intention to withhold information from one or more people. And that intention can come to mind when you have to enact it, when you have to act on it, when you conceal a secret from someone in a conversation because you're talking about something related to the secret. But that intention can come to mind outside of those conversations as well. And that turns out to be where some of the harms seep in.
Well, let's say someone works for the government or is a therapist or a lawyer, and it's their job to keep secrets. How does that impact them?
It's a really good question because we don't really know yet. So a lot of what my research looks at is this idea of our personal secrets and, the effects of keeping them from the people around us. When we think about people keeping secrets for their work, it's a little bit different because, now we're not talking about secrets that you're keeping for yourself. We're talking about secrets that are being shared with you that you have to keep, or secrets that you have to keep for your workplace. We do know some about that. And in some ways, it can look like personal secrets. We know that if you feel that you really want to share this information with someone, but you're not allowed to, it can feel isolating, just like a personal secret can feel isolating. But if there's something sort of special about you being let in on this information, that not just anyone can know this information, a sense of status can come with that as well, which is associated with feelings of meaning at work. And so there's some good that can come from those kinds of professional secret keeping, but in some cases it can look like our personal secrets too and hurt our well-being.
I often hear of people keeping family secrets, and that's definitely a plural. Is that something that really impacts their health?
Yeah, so family secrets is a common kind of secret. And so when I first started doing this research, one of the first questions was, well, what do people keep secret? We didn't even know the answer to that at the time. And so to get at that, we asked a couple thousand people, what's the secret you're currently keeping? And then we looked at those responses and arrived at a set of categories that really comprehensively described what people told us they were keeping secret. And when we gave that list to another group of participants, we saw that it really did cover what most people keep secret. And so it's this list of 38 categories of secrets. And so if I just ask someone open-ended, what's a secret you're currently keeping? 92% of the time it fits one of these 38 categories. And the average person is currently keeping 13 of the 38 categories of secrets. Family secrets is one category on that list, and it's a pretty common one. Other really common secrets include secrets about a lie we've told, include romantic desire, ambitions.
I was real impressed with the amount of research that you've done on this topic, and it has me thinking about mental health. Is that something that people are still trying to keep secret, or are we a little bit more open about that today?
Yeah, so mental health struggles is also another category on that list. So it is a common secret. I do think if we think about, this from a very broad perspective and think about, the last 50 years or something like that, I do think, yes, it's far more acceptable to talk about these mental health struggles today. People still keep them secret as well.
I was really shocked by the numbers where you share that 69% of secrets include a lie. And where does that start to incorporate?
Yeah, so the idea here is, how many people have each of these secrets? And yeah, some of the most common secrets are held by more than 50% of people in those cases, and lies is on that list. So is romantic desire, family secrets, and ambitions, which I had just mentioned. And, it turns out that it can be a little complicated where, a lie is a way to keep a secret. But what we mean is there's a significant thing you've told. There's a significant example of not telling the truth, and you don't want people to know about that, and you're keeping that secret.
Now, do people keep secrets because they just don't want to have conflicts at home or work?
That's one reason for sure. Certainly at the end of the day, people are trying to protect something when they're keeping a secret. Maybe they're trying to protect themselves, their reputations, how other people see them. Maybe they're trying to protect a relationship, trying to avoid a conflict, trying to avoid damage to a relationship or hurting someone else's feelings.
So, when we look at personality psychology and secrets, how do they combine?
So we do know that there are some personality traits that are reliably related to keeping secrets. The one that makes intuitive sense, I think you'll agree, is, that extroverted people keep fewer secrets, introverted people keep more secrets. But it's interesting, just because, someone is energized by social interactions, doesn't mean they would necessarily keep fewer secrets, but it turns out they do. Another personality trait that is related to secrecy, one that I find very interesting, is conscientiousness. It turns out that people who are more conscientious keep more secrets. So we normally think of conscientiousness as this thing that, leads to better grades and, being more productive at work. But that carefulness and diligence means that people are even more careful about what they share with other people.
In your book, you share about children and secrets. Are they just a sponge and they learn from their parents, or how does that all work?
Right. So children, as soon as they learn how to keep secrets, they try to. They're not very good at it in their early years. And, where this skill comes from, it requires you to understand that something in your head is not necessarily in other people's heads. And so if you've done something and there were no witnesses, people wouldn't know about it until you told them. That's an insight that takes some time to develop. Children in their youngest years, ages 3 or so, they're not yet very good about thinking about other people's minds, and they're not really good yet at the idea that someone could believe something wrongly. Someone might have a false understanding of some state of the world, but as children get older, as they're around 4 and 5, they start understanding that someone could think something's true when that's not the case. And that's what enables us to start keeping secrets. As children get a little more sophisticated in their understanding of other people's minds, they get better at telling cover stories to try to keep their secrets. So, for example, in their earliest years, say age 3, children might try to keep a secret by simply denying it. So, for example, one story a parent shared with me is about a child who denied eating any cookies while having cookie crumbs on his lips, or another girl who had lipstick all over her face but denied getting into her mother's makeup. But as children get older, they start, having more believable stories because they understand what makes for a more believable story. So rather than blaming a ghost for a broken vase, they will blame the cat.
Always blame that cat, right? So when my dog goes and buries a bone in the backyard, is he keeping secrets from me?
I'm going to say no. Dogs and cats are interesting case studies because they interact so much with people, and it leads to wonder how much they understand about our minds. Hiding an object is what I would call concealment, and certainly animals do that. But when we're talking about secrets, we're normally thinking about hiding information. And so it's a higher bar to meet, this idea that that there's this information that you have access to that other people don't. And it seems that, for example, chimpanzees can engage in rudimentary forms of hiding information.
I think that's so fascinating how that all comes together. And thank you. My dog probably really appreciates you standing up for him. Well, and so is it something we really should be aware of when we look at children keeping secrets and maybe not being as truthful as they can be? Does that kind of lead them down a path that we really should be watching them for?
So I think in their earliest years, if we think about pre-adolescence, the kinds of things that children try to keep secret, they're pretty small potatoes. Children don't want to get scolded. They don't want to get in trouble. And so it makes sense that they might try to use secrecy as a way of avoiding getting in trouble. To me, that sounds kind of like normal development. But I think where we really need to be concerned is when we start getting into things that matter more than, spilling something or, a stain on the carpet. When we get to adolescence, if now we're talking about keeping secrets about worries and shames and struggles, now we're talking about something totally different. And those are not the kinds of things we want kids to keep secret from us. If they're struggling, that's something you want them to feel comfortable bringing to you. And so what you want to do as a parent is try to keep an open door for communication for those kinds of things, and let them know that when they're struggling, they can come to you, and even if they've done something wrong, they'll be there for you and support you and try to help you. So they don't keep those kinds of things secret, because when they keep those kinds of things secret, that's when we start seeing harm to well-being.
So when someone goes through a very traumatic experience, is part of the coping mechanism to keep that a secret?
Yeah. Okay. No. Yes. So trauma is another example of a common secret, and it of course makes sense that people don't want to talk about traumatic experiences. That can be difficult to do so. People may not want to relive those experiences. People may not want other people to know about them because they feel ashamed. But it turns out that if people have unhealthy outlook, or if people are struggling with something like that, or they feel ashamed, those kinds of really harmful and toxic feelings, they're hard to shake on your own. They don't just go away so much, even if you just try to ignore something. Where unhealthy thinking, the way to break unproductive and unhealthy lines of thinking is by talking about it with other people. And, even if it's something that's difficult to talk about, often if you can find the right person, you're going to be in a much better place for it. And so I think the question isn't, should I talk about this? It's, who can I talk about this with? And it could be anyone that you feel comfortable with, whether it's a friend, a family member, a professional, a neighbor, a bartender, just someone who you feel like you can feel comfortable speaking to. And it turns out that the average experience of confiding a secret in someone goes really well. Other people have a lot to offer us, things that are really hard to find on our own. Emotional support, a new perspective, advice. These things are hard to find on our own, but really easily come out of conversations.
In your book, you share about how when our mind wanders towards a secret, it's difficult to stop thinking of it. Why is that?
Often our secrets deal with things that are unresolved or ongoing concerns or are associated with negative feelings. And, when we intend to keep a secret, what we mean to do is, if it ever comes up in conversation, we want to be ready for that moment, so we can successfully hide the secret in conversation. And that's very much what often happens. So when people intend to keep secrets, they know what they're doing. They can sense when it might come up, and they sort of know how to deflect or move the conversation on. But the problem with that is that to intend to keep a secret, you're on the lookout for ways to uphold that intention. And that means you're going to think about the secret even when there isn't another person in the room. You want to be easily reminded of your secret so you can hide it if you ever have to. But that increased sensitivity to the secret means you're going to be thinking about it even, outside of contexts where you might have to hide it. And because it might be associated with shame or feelings of isolation or inauthenticity, when the secret makes us feel bad, it turns out that when we feel bad, we start thinking about other things that make us feel bad, and you can get involved in this self-reinforcing cycle. When we get to the point where we feel like we can't even control our thoughts, that's when we call it rumination. And it turns out that repetitively thinking about secrets is really harmful, even if it's not a secret you ever have to hide in conversation.
Now, do we have to also look at morality when we look at secrets and how they affect us as a being?
So certainly when we feel that we've done something wrong, this is one of the strongest predictors of feeling ashamed of a secret. And feelings of shame are especially harmful. When people feel ashamed, they feel like they're a bad person. And that's a really harmful way of thinking about yourself, of course. But you don't need to think about it that way. When we guide people instead to think, rather than think I'm a bad person, when we get people instead to think I did a bad thing, that's called guilt. And guilt turns out to be far more healthy than feelings of shame. And so rather than letting people reflect on how bad they feel about themselves and, how they're a bad person, when we get people to think about their actions instead, the reason that's so much more helpful is you can act differently next time. You can draw a lesson for the future. And so when people feel guilty rather than ashamed, when they're focusing on their actions, they think, yeah, I made a mistake in the past, but I won't make it again. I can learn from it. That's not who I am anymore. And so, just because something feels wrong, just because a past behavior feels immoral, there are ways forward. And it's thinking about your actions rather than how they reflect on yourself.
So, how are secrets in a business kind of professional goal orientation setting? How are those different?
So there's two ways of thinking about it. So one is that if a secret feels really related to your goals, and that often comes down to our profession is a major source of our goals. People feel they have a lot of insight into those secrets, relative to secrets that are not so clearly linked to goals. And so secrets that feel more emotional rather than goal-based, people feel they have less insight into. And so if your secret does relate to a goal of yours, or something goal-oriented or related to your professional life, there's something good in that you can recognize, I know why I'm keeping this secret. And that turns out to be really helpful and leads people to feel more capable of coping with that secret. And that kind of secret is less harmful when people feel that they really understand their reasons for keeping the secret. And then, as we were mentioning before, if the secret is this, if you have this privileged access to this information that not just anyone gets to know, there's some positive feelings that come from that, feelings of status, feelings of meaning. And so, I think the question or the thing to take from that kind of finding is that secrets don't have to hurt us. And if we look to the ones that don't hurt us, there are lessons to draw there in helping us with our other secrets.
Is there a kind of a path forward for people to determine whether or not their secrets would be harmful for somebody else or something that should be told or shared or not?
Yeah. So there's essentially two kinds of ways to share a secret. There's sharing a secret to the person you're specifically keeping it from, and that's what I call confession. Confession is very complicated, but let's come back to that. If we're talking about revealing a secret to a third party, someone that's not someone you're specifically revealing a secret from, this is where a lot of the benefits come from, because you don't have to reveal it to the person you're keeping it from, although sometimes that is the right choice. But you can essentially get the benefits from talking about the secret without the risks that come from revealing it to the person you're keeping it from. So now let's think about that. When should you confess a secret? I think the questions to ask yourself is someone being harmed by not knowing the information? If that's the case, that's probably a clue or a signal that maybe you do need to reveal that secret to someone if they're being harmed by not knowing the information. Now, what if revealing the secret could hurt their feelings? Now it gets complicated. If we're talking about, what many people label as white lies, saying something that's not true to protect someone's feelings, a lot of people will say that's okay. If your friend asks you about their outfit as you arrive at a party and you actually don't think it looks good, it's maybe not the right time to say to be honest when it's too late to change. And so in a situation like that, people will think that a white lie is more kind than being honest. But when we start talking about bigger secrets, for example, infidelity, then it's not so simple. And if you're wondering whether that's the kind of thing you should confess to your partner, questions to ask yourself are, why do you want to reveal this? Is it just to get this off your chest? The risk there is revealing a secret like that could make you feel a whole lot better, but could make your partner a whole lot worse. So you might just be taking the burden off you and putting it onto them. And, again, it matters. The details matter. If this is a repeat behavior, if you've cheated on someone many times, you're not going to find a psychologist who's going to say that's an okay secret to keep. If it's a one-time indiscretion, then it's time to start asking questions like, well, would they want to know? Would they feel they have a right to know? How do you know that? That's, maybe you kind of already have a sense of what they would want in that situation. What I can tell you is that we once ran a study where we asked 300 people in committed relationships to imagine that their partner, in a total lapse of judgment, something they had never done before and will never do again, got drunk out of town and cheated on them. Imagine this has never happened before, would never happen again. Would you want to know? And 77% of people said, yes, I would want to know. I thought the number was going to be lower, but whatever the number is, the important takeaway there is sometimes people would not want to know and sometimes people would want to know. And, I think the best thing to think about for any secret, if you're trying to figure out whether you should reveal it to the person you're keeping it from, that's not a decision you need to make on your own. You can talk to someone else and get their advice.
So let's say we're in a place where we're just not ready to talk about a secret quite yet. How can we manage the questions that come to us?
So, there's two ways of thinking about this. There's, how to handle the specific moment in the conversation when someone's asking you about a secret that you're not ready to talk about. And then also, how can you cope with a secret on your own if you're not going to talk about it. Um, to manage a secret in a conversation when you're not ready to speak to it, you know, one easy but potentially really awkward way of handling it is say, "Oh, I don't want to talk to that." um, Maybe there are situations when that seems like a good choice. Like maybe someone asks you an inappropriate question at work, and you can just say that you'd rather not discuss it. But if we're talking about a friend, a family member, your romantic partner, saying that you don't feel comfortable talking about something with them is usually not your best option. People don't like to feel that people close to them are not comfortable enough to reveal something to them. And so instead, you can do things like trying to deflect the question. You could ask a question of your own. That turns out to be a really effective strategy. Often people don't even notice that their question went unanswered. You can introduce a new topic to the conversation, change the topic, make a joke. Essentially, any response that puts some distance between the original question and what you were going to respond to. Essentially, if you ask a question, now they have to answer that question, and it makes it harder to backtrack to the original question. But if we're talking about, outside of these conversations, how do we help cope with secrets when we're not ready to talk about them? One thing you can do is journal. This can be helpful, and it's really important to know how it can be helpful because it's not always helpful. If you're using journaling essentially as a place to sort of rehash the past and how bad you feel about it, then journaling just becomes a written record of harmful rumination. If you're not ready to talk about a secret with someone, in order to work through it on your own, you essentially have to try to recreate what you get out of conversations. And so you want to use a journal to try to challenge your ways of thinking, try to find a fresh perspective, trying to find new ways of looking at a problem. If that's what you're using journaling to do, it'll be more likely to be helpful.
In your book, you share about how when we open up to others, we learn about ourselves. And I was real impressed with that.
There's so much to learn about the world, and the way we learn about it is discussing it with other people, and we're part of that world. So much of our understanding of ourselves comes from how we see ourselves reflected in others, see how they respond to us, see how they respond to our disclosures. We learn about ourselves from talking about ourselves with other people, and so this is why disclosure is so valuable. Disclosure is how we build relationships. It's how we maintain relationships. It's how we deepen relationships. And it's how we learn about ourselves.
So, is there kind of a model that would be beneficial for us to follow on when we should share with others, when we shouldn't, and who those people should be?
There are people who we find to be more helpful when it comes to revealing secrets. And so our research shows that people really like to confide in compassionate people who will be non-judgmental, caring, empathic. Another trait people really like in their confidants is assertiveness. Someone who's going to push you to do the thing that you need to do. People don't as much like to confide in talkative social butterflies. People don't as much like to confide in people who are really overly concerned with the rules. And so, another thing to think about when you're choosing who to reveal a secret to is, what you don't want to do is reveal a secret to someone who's going to be totally scandalized by what you're telling them. We see in our research that if you confide a secret in someone and they find what you're telling them to be as highly morally objectionable, if what you have done evokes moral outrage in them, they're more likely to reveal that secret to a third party, essentially as a form of punishment. So you're looking for someone who's going to have a similar way of thinking about this thing as you. And then one more thing to think about when you're choosing who to confide in is sometimes when you confide a secret in someone, you're essentially entangling them into the problem. If your secret is, let's say, back to this example, you cheated on your partner. If you're revealing that secret to someone who's really close with your partner, well, now you're putting them in a really difficult position. And so as much if you can avoid it, it's ideal to not entangle someone into the problem when you're choosing who to talk to.
Now, are there such things as positive secrets?
Yes, positive secrets are these lovely counterexamples to everything we've been talking about. Most of the secrets we keep have a more negative flavor, but there are plenty of things that are positive in nature that we keep secret. Some of life's most momentous and joyous occasions start off as secret. Marriage proposals, a couple that's been trying to get pregnant and now they are pregnant, surprise parties, surprise gifts. And as you might expect, these kinds of secrets are really different. And it's not just because they're positive, but that's one major reason. When we think about these kinds of secrets, they can make us feel excited and happy and energized. And thinking about these secrets is related to higher well-being rather than lower well-being. And it's not just because they're positive. The other feature that people really feel when it comes to these secrets is they feel really in control over them. Maybe that's because they have a very specific plan on who they might reveal it to, and when. Think about a marriage proposal, for example. But people feel more in control over their positive secrets, and this also translates to higher feelings of happiness and energy and vitality and well-being. And again, I think there's a lesson to draw from these other kinds of secrets, because we're really in control over all our secrets. It feels that way more with positive secrets. And so, how can we translate that? How can we transport those helpful feelings when it comes to our other secrets?
I was impressed in your book. You talk about how secrets invigorate, can invigorate us. And, it's so interesting. I look back on, like little surprises I've done for friends or family, what have you, and I could feel like you get jazzed up about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You're focused on this positive thing that's going to happen in the future, and their surprise, and surprising events are very meaningful and highly memorable. That's why sometimes people go for these very orchestrated marriage proposals and things like that, and surprise parties. One small caveat is these kinds of more extravagant surprises are really great for people who like surprises, but for the occasional person who doesn't like those, the revelation may not go as well as you hope. But I think most people do, and I think people have an understanding which people are less inclined for the extravagant surprise. But even very small surprises, it doesn't have to be this major big secret to leverage the benefits of positive secrets. Just little things, those can have the same effects.
Are there cultural differences in how we keep secrets?
This is something we're exploring right now. And so it's very much an ongoing research direction. And there seems to be some interesting cultural differences. There are some interesting things that don't seem to vary by culture. And so, for example, I find in my research that it's not frequently concealing a secret in conversation isn't related to lower well-being, but frequently thinking about secrets is related to lower well-being. And that's something we see across the globe that doesn't seem to be culturally specific to Americans. But we do see some differences in how much people feel ashamed of their secrets, and those resemble some cultural differences we already know about. And people in more collectivistic cultures are a bit more likely to experience shame for these kinds of events, and secrets included. And one other cultural difference that we've been looking at is essentially, to what extent is it easy to form relationships with people around you? And when the environment is such that there's more opportunities for relationship formation and development, people disclose more and keep fewer secrets.
In your book, you share about the secrets map, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah. And so one way of answering the question of why is thinking about our secrets so harmful is to look to the content of our secrets. And that's when we come back to these 38 categories of secrets that people commonly keep. And through a series of studies where we showed people these 38 categories of secrets, and we essentially asked people which of these secrets are similar to each other and which are different from each other, which are really far apart from each other, what we could do is essentially we let our participants to make a map of the secrets, putting similar secrets closer together and farther secrets farther apart. And we had a couple thousand people do this. And what this gave us was essentially a table of distances, how far each secret was from each other's secret. And with a few more studies, we were able to understand, by what dimensions were people creating these maps. How were people, in what ways are the secrets similar to each other, in what ways are they different from each other? And it turns out with 3 dimensions we could really well describe the maps that our participants created. And so the first one, we've touched on some of these already. So the first one is how immoral is the secret, and secrets that are really seen as higher in immorality evoke more shame. Then some secrets are seen to involve other people more in our relationships with them. And so the less our secret involves other people in our relationships with them, the more isolating those secrets feel. And then third, the more our secrets are goal-oriented, which often means related to our profession, but not always, the more insight we feel we have into those secrets. And secrets that are really low in goal orientation, that are a bit more emotional in tone, we feel we have less insight into. And what's really useful in knowing that there are 3 ways in which our secrets can hurt us: feelings of shame, feelings of isolation, feelings of, uncertainty and low insight into the secret, is it turns out that it's exceedingly rare that a secret will hurt us on all 3 dimensions. And that's really good news, because what we do in our studies is we show participants this, and we essentially ask them to identify a way in which a secret is not hurting them. And 95% of the time, people will report that one of the 3 dimensions I just mentioned, one of the 3 harms, is not present in their situation. And that's really good, because once we help people understand a way in which their secret is not hurting them, it helps people understand there's actually a coping resource in this understanding. If you feel like your secret is not wrong or immoral, that makes you feel more capable in coping with it. Or if you feel like a secret, you really understand your reasons for it, that also helps us feel more capable in coping with the secret. And when we guide people to understand the way in which it's not hurting, we help them realize there's a way forward. There's a lifeline in that. There's a way that you can feel more able to cope with the secret when we realize the sort of resource that we have along one of those 3 dimensions.
Now, do people feel a greater sense of isolation when they carry a big secret?
Yeah, I would say so. I think, the more significant the secret, the more any of these harms can be heightened. And so, if you feel like you're struggling with a secret, I think that's a good sign, a good signal that it's time to change course somehow. And maybe that's talking to someone, which often is a really helpful way forward. Maybe that's trying to use journaling to find a fresh perspective. But yeah, if you're struggling with a secret, there's a way forward.
It seems like keeping secrets would use a lot of energy and time. And how does that affect a person that way?
Yeah, if our secrets are intruding on our thoughts and distracting us from other tasks at hand, it can certainly wear away at our well-being and our ability to sort of do other things that we need to do. And so again, I think that it's important to understand that, not all secrets are bad and not all secrets are harmful, and some are small and some are okay to keep. It's the ones that are harming us that we want to find a path forward for.
So let's say that we are keeping a secret. We're not quite ready to tell anybody. How can we determine if it's a secret that we should or could or is okay to share, and how that will impact us?
When we're trying to figure out whether this is a secret to talk about with others, I think it's, again, thinking about, well, what effect might this have, revealing the secret to someone? And one thing to know is that, we're afraid of people responding poorly or thinking worse of us when we, reveal something. The good news is that our sort of worst case scenario in mind is really unlikely. People respond more positively than we expect them to. The average experience of revealing a secret to someone is people felt like they got something really helpful out of it. And it turns out that people don't need to respond all that positively to get that feeling. Even just a lukewarm response can be helpful. Only if someone responds really poorly do people regret confiding. And it's really rare that that happens, probably because people choose the right people to confide in. And so I think the question isn't like, should I talk about this with someone, but who can I talk to about this?
Thank you. I appreciate you going over that. And it's interesting when we look at just secrets themselves. I mean, there's so much to learn here. I was so impressed with all the research you've done. And, it has me thinking, you shared also some really great stories. Is there one that you would like to share with us right now?
Hmm. Let's think about that. Which ones? Yes. Some are more upsetting than others. One really fascinating story, and it's, one of the stories that I always knew I wanted to write about, is about these, this is the not upsetting one. Yeah. About these two lawyers who had a client essentially, admit to a murder. And this was a murder that someone was wrongfully accused of, someone else was wrongfully accused of, and was in jail for. Um, and the good news is this person eventually gets released. I guess the slightly upsetting, not slightly, there is an upsetting part of this story, which is that that person sat in jail for 26 years before he was released. And these lawyers had to keep this secret for decades. And why it's an interesting story for me, besides the heartbreak of a wrongful imprisonment, is that this was a secret that they thought about every single day. And this was a secret that they never had to hold back in conversation. It's not like people were asking about them, this kind of thing. But it goes to show you that there's so much involved when it comes to keeping our secrets besides holding them back in conversation. And the secret followed them for years. And, fortunately, that person was eventually released, of course, way too late. But, our secrets, it turns out that hiding a secret in conversation is the easy part of secrecy. The hard part is everything else. And the good news is that it doesn't have to be that way. Even if we choose to keep the secret, there are healthy ways forward, and there are ways to feel better and to cope more. And even in a secret like that, perhaps there was a way to come forward, if we could talk about it and find a way.
Does like the sense of uncertainty affect how people will share a secret or not?
Yeah, I think I think the first time, when we go back to thinking about the development of secrecy, and, I think as soon as children or teenagers start keeping secrets because they're uncertain and they're worried about how the other person would respond, when we let our fears eclipse our ability to place trust in others, that's when secrets start to hurt our well-being. And revealing a secret makes ourselves vulnerable to other people. And, that sounds really scary, but it's one of the most powerful social forces you have control over. If you reveal a secret to someone that you wouldn't reveal to just anyone, that's a profound act of intimacy. And the other person will recognize that and appreciate that it took courage to reveal that. And, secrets don't have to be these really harmful things. When we reveal them to other people, they bring us closer together. And, we can get help if we need help.
So, do secrets, if we look at secrets that we've kept for a long time, do they tend to have us focus more on the negative and keep us more in the past?
It's interesting. The role of time is also something that we're currently exploring and still doing studies on. It turns out that there's two ways of thinking about time. and one is harmful and one is helpful. If we think about time as distance from the event, like this thing happened a very long time ago, when we think about time like that, it's not harmful and it can even be helpful. I think some secrets 20 years later just aren't relevant to today in the way that they once were. And that turns out to be a strength because, it's just not something that we're concerned about anymore. It's just like it happened ages ago and it's just not relevant today. So when we think about time as distance, it's helpful. But when we think about time as duration, it's can be harmful. As in, rather than thinking about this thing happened a long time ago, if we think about, oh God, I've been keeping this secret for years now. If we think about time as duration, that's when we start to see it being more harmful, and people are more preoccupied when they think about, oh, I've been keeping this forever, and it's harming me. And so, one way of thinking is trying to reframe that is thinking about less about how you've been holding on to it for a long time and more about how this is a thing that happened a really long time ago. And, we have some research that shows if something happened a long time ago, a lot of people will say, you know what, I'm not that person anymore. And that's a really healthy perspective because then you don't really need to feel as bad about it because, yeah, there was this thing that happened once upon a time, but that was a different person and I've grown since then. And, that's when people think about it that way, secrets from a long time ago don't hurt us as much.
And positive secrets keep us more kind of focused towards the future.
Yeah. Positive secrets often are oriented toward the future, especially the ones that we plan to reveal. There's this interesting other kind of positive secret where it's not like a surprise gift that is eventually going to be revealed. And, what's interesting about this other form of positive secrecy is, we don't plan to reveal it, but we feel really okay about keeping it. Guilty pleasures can fall in this category. Things that we enjoy but don't talk about with other people because we think they won't understand it or would make fun of it, or we might feel embarrassed to admit to it. But if you feel like, what, I really like playing video games or I really like soap operas and other people won't get that, that's fine. People will say, I feel okay about not talking about this. And that kind of positive secret, it's a situation where rather than isolation, it's this more healthy form of solitude. Rather, people don't feel alone in the sense of feeling isolated, but they feel sort of a sense of autonomy and independence from other people. And these are positive feelings. Again, if we try to take these lessons for other secrets, saying, I understand that this is difficult to keep secret or complicated, but I feel like I'm doing it for the right reasons. And I feel like I'm in control. These are positive feelings that can help us.
Now, do you have like a secret telephone where people can call and leave all their secrets?
Yeah, we do. And I do believe you can call it nowadays. When we first installed the secret telephone, you had to stumble physically upon it to interact with it. And we installed it in different parks throughout New York City. And if you happen to stumble upon it, you could listen to other secrets people have shared or record your own. But if you look up the secret telephone, I think you can find some of those recordings online, and maybe you can leave your own as well.
And lift some of that weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, Michael. I mean, you have just written such an amazing book. I felt that this was such a great read. I learned so much. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
Absolutely. So you can find my website, michaelslepian.com. That's just my name, where you can learn some more about the research, or you could find the book, The Secret Life of Secrets.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, Michael. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, The Secret Life of Secrets: How Our Inner Worlds Shape Well-Being, Relationships, and Who We Are. The Secret Life of Secrets is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. And of course, remember to support our indie bookstores. Make sure to visit Michael's website at michaelslepian, that's SLEPIAN.com. There you can learn about his work, upcoming research that he's doing, and stay part of his community. Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.